Mr. Mayor,
Wait for this period to be
Okay, the meeting's starting.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, welcome to the May 20th meeting of Glendale City Council. May we have roll call, please?
Council members Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero. Weaver.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here. May we have the report, please?
The agenda for the May 20th, 2014 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, May 15, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay. I guess we have flag salute coming next. Today's flag salute will be led by Councilmember Friedman, and please remain standing for invocation by Rabbi Simcha Bachman.
I invite you to join me in renewing our pledge to our nation's flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And standing.
The Liberty Bell is an iconic symbol of American independence located in Philadelphia, also known as the city of brotherly love. On it is inscribed those eternal words from the biblical book of Leviticus, and I quote, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land, unto all the inhabitants thereof." These words have guided us as a nation since we declared our independence, and they guide us ever so much today as we navigate the challenges that face our city, our country, and indeed the entire world. As American citizens, we unite faith and freedom by asserting that liberty is a gift from God, endowed upon every single American regardless of race, color, creed, gender, or religious affiliation. We are reminded that the role of our elected leaders is to be sincere custodians of these liberties and defenders of the people. Let us settle our hearts for just a moment in prayer. Eternal God, you enlighten our lives by empowering us to do your work here on earth in creating a world of liberty, justice, and peace for all. We pray for this city of Glendale, that it may forever be a beacon of freedom, human rights, and economic opportunity. Protector of mankind, may your name be invoked only to inspire and unify our city, but never to divide it. We ask that you place your blessing upon the mayor and all elected officers of our city, that they may lead wisely and with civility and work together for our common good. Guide them that they may be champions for justice. These things we ask of you, eternal God, committed that the torch of liberty shall pass from hand to hand, from heart to heart, until the radiance of peace and righteousness shines for all God's children from one end of the earth to the other. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Okay, what's next?
Under presentation and appointments at 3A is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, May 27, 2014.
Yes. Ms. Beers.
Mayor Sinani and members of the City Council, for the Glendale Housing Authority, we have no business agenda items. We do have a special meeting of the City Council and the successor agency, one item, public hearing, Director of Economic Development. This is regarding the proposed Lemley Lofts project, which is to be located at 111 East Wilson Avenue and 215 North Maryland Avenue. That afternoon also at 3 p.m. we have a special meeting of the City Council, and we have one item, Director of Community Development. This is regarding the proposed Hampton Inn and Suites Hotel, and this is to be located at 315 South Grand Boulevard. And Mayor Sinanian, that evening we do not have a City Council meeting at 6 p.m. That meeting has been canceled, and we will resume our City Council meeting in the evening on June the 3rd.
Okay. It's been canceled. We don't have quorum.
Based on our schedule for the year as it relates to our being off on Monday for Memorial Weekend, Tuesdays are typically canceled.
Thank you. Next.
3B is a proclamation designating the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2014 as EMS Week.
Okay, and who will be receiving the proclamation?
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, City staff, thank you very much. It's with great honor that I receive on behalf of the dedicated medical personnel this proclamation recognizing the EMS Week in the City of Glendale. Our city is fortunate to have an outstanding EMS program. Since 2000, we have been providing our community the very best patient medical care, thanks to the Council's decision and support for allowing us to make these services available to our community. In 2013, the Glendale Fire Department responded to 15,248 medical calls. This past quarter alone, we've responded to 3,776. Currently, the Glendale Fire Department has 89 medics licensed that are responding and providing service to our community. Tonight with us from the Glendale Fire Department, we have Fire Chief Harold Scoggins, Captain Jeff Ragusa, Mr. Greg Anderson, and Erica Caribbean. Representing the Glendale Adventist Medical Center, we have Kevin Roberts, President and CEO, Judy Blair, Senior Vice President and Nursing Officer. From the Glendale Memorial Hospital, Jack Ivey, President, and Tony Reyes, the Emergency Room Supervisor. From St. Joseph Hospital, we have Kevin Traber, Director of Emergency and Cardiovascular Services, Jessica Strange, Pre-Hospital Care Coordinator. And from the American Red Cross, we have Ronald Farina, Chief Executive Officer. And thank you very much for providing us and this proclamation, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at our little gathering. This is an opportunity for all the medical agencies and to come together to help us to provide a great service to the community. And there's something about getting to know the faces and working with our other agencies. So in case that unfortunate case of us having to respond to a medical response, we know the people, and it helps provide a better service to our community. But thank you very much.
Thank you. I think gratitude is owed to all those who are engaged in emergency medical response, and I can't imagine what any of us would do without the service. And I think in one way or another, in one capacity or another, all of us have come in contact with some aspect of EMS, and therefore, keep up the great work. Thank you for everyone involved. Thank you for all the hospitals that are engaged also. I'll read the proclamation, then I'll ask Councilmember Najarian to present it. And the proclamation reads, whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas EMS plays a critical role in public outreach and injury prevention and is evolving in its role as an important member of healthcare community, and whereas first responders, emergency medical technicians, and paramedics stand ready to provide compassionate, life-saving care to those in need of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas the members of EMS teams, both career and volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of EMS practitioners by designating Emergency Medical Services Week, now I, therefore, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through May 24th as Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme EMS Anytime, Dedicated for Life. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities.
Anybody like to, Mr. Roberts?
Just like to say a couple words of appreciation and recognition for our EMS services. I'm Kevin Roberts, the president of Glendale Adventist Medical Center. I've worked in a lot of states, in a lot of cities, and a lot of hospitals, and I've seen a lot of ways of the interaction, interplay between EMS and the hospital systems. And I must say that the connectivity, the engagement, the collaboration between the EMS system in Glendale and the local hospitals, I'm sure that they all have the same experience we do at Glendale Adventist, is really unparalleled. not only do we have a great relationship with these services, but this is a forward-thinking, leaning into the future of healthcare. Our EMS system is piloting some very innovative methods that will help achieve the triple aim of healthcare and service and quality and cost by reducing the number of ambulance runs to hospitals. Of course, the hospitals should say, oh no, we like ambulances coming to our hospitals. But at the end of the day, it's about the health of the community and people being in the right place for the service they need. And eventually, during this pilot that Chief Scoggins has put together, you will be sending your ambulances to urgent care centers in places where lower costs but good care will be provided. So I've just really been impressed with the way that this whole system works in Glendale. So I want to congratulate them personally.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Next, Mr. Clerk.
Next item on the agenda at C is Mayor's commendations to the sponsors of the I Love My Neighborhood poster contest.
Okay, so we have a number of commendations associated with this, first being the sponsors. I do want to say a few words about the contest itself. This year we had 4,500 contestants participate from 31 different schools. And the awards ceremony was held on April 9th. Over 400 school officials and parents were present. There were 65 finalists, but the winner of the contest is Alexandra Schwalbach, a 6th grader from Mountain Avenue Elementary School. And I hope we'll see Alexandra in a little bit. But before we go there, we do want to present a commendation to Lexus of Glendale. And we have, yes. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's actually quite an event. We've done this several years in a row, and it is so amazing. I didn't hear the total count to what you said a while ago, and that's with so many schools involved.
4,531
That's
schools.
an amazing to these people behind me that actually put this together, and got to applaud them. So this is a great thing to be sponsoring. So
thank you. Thank you for sponsoring this program and so many others. Lexus of Glendale is a very reliable partner for the city of Glendale over and over with different programs, and this is no exception. So in token of our appreciation, I'm going to read this commendation and ask Councilmember Friedman to present it to you. It's a mayor's commendation presented to Lexus of Glendale in recognition of your platinum-level sponsorship of the 2014 I Love My Neighborhood poster contest. On behalf of the City of Glendale and City Council, thank you for your support of this wonderful event. And our legacy level sponsor was Ara Abrahamian of DPS Banners, and Ara is not here. Oh, he's not. Okay, well, we're grateful for sponsoring this great event. Thank you to Ara Abrahamian and DPS Banners. I will read the commendation into the record, and we'll find him and present it to him. Presented to Ara Abrahamian, dpsbanners.com, in recognition of your legacy-level sponsorship of the 2014 I Love My Neighborhood poster contest. On behalf of the City of Glendale and City Council, thank you for your 15 years of continued support for this wonderful event. So, thank you, Mr. Abrahamian. And next.
Next is a presentation to the I Love My Neighborhood poster contest winner, Alexandra Schwalbach from Mountain View Elementary School.
And before she comes up, which I want her to do as soon as possible, like right away,
Oh, I've got the poster.
and stand with me.
You do.
I'm Marilyn Gannell. I'm the chair of the Clean and Beautiful Glendale Committee. And two of our members of our committee are here this evening. I'd like them to each come up and introduce themselves and say 2 or 3 sentences. Please.
It was puts me on the spot. Shara Versweveld. I'm also a Clean and Beautiful Committee member.
Excellent.
My name is Margaret Hammond, and I know most of you here. I have to say that this program is one of the best in enabling young people, young children, to become good citizens of our city and care about, the city and looking after things such as graffiti and, picking up after themselves trash and so forth. It helps them to have why we do it is to keep our city beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Is the principal?
As the chair of the committee, it is a pleasure, a privilege, to introduce our winner and to say that this is one of the most exciting projects that the committee does. It brings the committee into the school and the school into the committee. So we don't have any standing aside. Everybody is working together. And it is remarkable and amazing that this young woman won out of over 4,000 and then out of 65. And now as a student at Mountain Avenue Elementary School, she is celebrating with her family who are here and with her school, who is very appreciative of the work that she did. And you'll all get to see the beautiful poster. And congratulations to you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words about how you did this and why you did this? You can do it. I won't hurt you.
Well, it was very exciting, and I've entered several times, and this is the first time I've been a finalist, and it was really amazing. Believe it. Still pretty amazing. And and all the other posters I saw were really good. So many people entered, and it's really nice how everyone tries their hardest, and enters the contest. It's just really cool how all the kids from K through 6 enter.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll sit down now.
Don't.
Would like you to not sit down?
No, not yet. Is Principal Witt here also? Oh, you are. Okay, great. We have a framed poster, which I'd like to present to you, and I will come down there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee for doing this. You said we've entered the contest several times. Never been a finalist. Not only we find this, it's not only a story of you participating in but it's a story of perseverance. So you should be proud, your parents should be proud, and all Glendale is proud to have you and all those people out there.
And she'll be going to. And she will be going to a number of different events during the course of the year and representing the city of Glendale and this great accomplishment. And it says me, that means her, and plus recycling equals my Glendale, her Glendale, and all of our Glendale. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Hi. Alexandra, it's nice seeing you again. Every year that I go in the back before it starts, and I try to pick the winner. This year, it was very, very difficult to do so, but yours was one of my picks in the top group. But like you said, the competition was very stiff this year. The artists are getting better and better. Now, did somebody give Alexandra a pin, city pin? No? Come on, over here, and I'll give you one by the
Okay, what's next, Mr. Clerk?
At E is the mayor's commendation to Randall Randy States for his service to the utility.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name is Anthony Silvers with the Glendale Water and Power, and I'm here to introduce Randall States. Okay, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for everyone that showed up tonight. Here's a little history on Randy States. Glendale Water and Power and the City of Glendale would like to say thank you to Randy States for his 64 years of dedicated service to the trade of power line work. Randy, without a doubt, is the most dedicated person in the trade in promoting and fostering power lineman traditions. Randy States' career started at Niagara Mohawk Power as an electrical helper at the age of 19. Then he soon married his beautiful wife from high school sweetheart, Betty, in which they have 4 lovely kids. Randy was soon promoted to lineman apprentice and became a journeyman in his early 20s. After 11 years with Niagara Mohawk Power and sub-zero temperatures, Randy moved his family to sunny California. In the mid-60s, Randy found a job as a lineman with the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. After spending 8 years in the field, Randy took the responsibilities of teaching, instructing, and mentoring young electrical helpers. Because of Randy's dedication of teaching to the craft of electrical helpers, Randy soon expanded his training to include apprentice linemen. Soon after, the Department of Water and Power promoted Randy to Electrical Overhead Superintendent of Training. One of Randy's greatest contributions to promoting the electrical utility trade was when Randy was offered the position of power line instructor for Los Angeles Trade Technical College. This opportunity through LA Trade Tech soon helped smaller utilities like Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, and Azusa start developing their own successful lineman apprenticeship programs. In the 90s, Randy retired from DWP, and soon Glendale Water and Power sought Randy's services to develop a cross-training program. This would merge the overhead and underground sections into a more efficient workforce. In 1996, Randy joined Glendale Water and Power's Joint Apprenticeship Committee. As an advisor to the Apprenticeship Committee, Randy provided the most honest yet kindest feedback to the apprentices. Randy always encouraged them to become better linemen as well as better individuals. In the mid-2000s, Randy also started teaching for the Verdugo Power Academy. This program was developed by Ramon Arbuey and was sponsored by Glendale Water and Power, Glendale College, the Verdugo Workforce Investment Board, and was backed by Congressman Adam Schiff, State Senator Carol Liu, and Assemblyman Mike Gatto. The Verdugo Power Academy is a 600-hour course where individuals learn electrical theory and the methods of climbing utility poles. This program was developed to provide training for individuals who were seeking to find careers in the utility business. There currently has been 8 classes with a very high success rate in finding careers in the utility business. Furthermore, Randy also promotes and encourages apprentices and linemen to participate in lineman rodeos. Currently, Glendale Water and Power participates in 2 annual rodeos, the American Public Power Association, which is the APPA, and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power rodeos. Every year, Randy would work hard to form teams to participate in these rodeos. He's also one of the biggest cheerleaders for the apprentices and the power linemen. Since 1969, roughly 3,500 linemen, station mechanics, apprentices, electrical helpers have benefited from Randy's teaching, instructing, and mentoring. Several of these individuals have also been promoted to line supervisors, managers, and superintendents. Finally, in 2008, with great honors, Randy States was inducted into the International Linemen's Hall of Fame. This was no easy task. Randy States was among only 6 inductees to be inducted into the Hall of Fame that year. From all across the country, utilities were trying to get their top linemen into the Hall of Fame. But that year, Randy States was the big winner. As you can see, Glendale Water and Power, the City of Glendale, Los Angeles Trade Tech, Glendale College, neighboring utilities, family and friends, and especially me, are very proud of you, Randy. In the utility's eyes, Randy, you are the Master Yoda of the power industry and will be dearly missed. Here's Randy.
Would you like to say a few words, or?
No, he'll
No. Well, we have a commendation for Mr. States, and his record speaks for itself. There's nothing that commendation or I can say will come even close to the service that he's provided to not only this city but all the neighboring cities, and all the achievements that he's had in the power and utility service. So thank you so much. And your supporters are here, obviously. That's a testament of how well liked and how, what your legacy is all about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy.
Just don't get tired of seeing all of you. So fun to see my family here. And from my on up. Perfect bosses. Love this place. My pal here.
When Randy resigned for the Department of Water and Power in the city of Glendale, called him and asked him to work for 1 year with him for 20 years. And he loved every minute of it, and he loved all the men who loved him.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Clerk.
Next on the agenda is City Council and staff comments.
Yes. Ms. Friedman?
Just wanted to mention a few events. I have to say that's a very tough act to follow.
Yeah, it is.
Boy, talk about service. It's amazing. Last week, we all attended the Glendale Police Awards Luncheon that was sponsored by the Glendale Police Foundation. Every year, it's amazing to see the acts of real bravery and real service that are done by the men and women of the police department, as well as members of the community who also receive awards. So I wanted to congratulate the Police Foundation and all of the officers and members of the public that received awards. Secondly, I attended on Saturday night the opening of the Brand 42 Works on Paper, which is a wonderful show at the Brand Library. It's an art show and sale, a curated show of some of the best artists, emerging and established artists in the Los Angeles area and beyond. I recommend it highly. But what I wanted to mention in particular was that an award was given to Irina Relatis, who was a longtime volunteer at the Brand Library, who has put on many of the shows there, done so much work as a volunteer, and will be stepping down from her position. I hope that she's not going away completely, but it was wonderful to be able to recognize someone who's given so much to their community. So I wanted to, again, congratulate Irina. And I think that's all I have for this week. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Najarian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple things. First, I'd like to thank all of the artists who have contributed their skill and talent to decorate our utility boxes. They really look great. They look much better than the slides or the PowerPoints that we had shown perhaps over a year ago, sort of emulating other cities and saying, look what these other cities are doing. I think Santa Monica was one, Del Mar another. There's really a great variety, and there's many more boxes to go, but I think everyone will agree that it's a great canvas, a blank canvas for our artists to show their talent and really make the entire city look exceptionally beautiful. The next item is regarding our campaigns, the campaign for the special election that is occurring. There seems to be a lot of excitement every year, and I made it clear early on to all the candidates who came to ask me for an endorsement, an official endorsement. I was flattered by all your requests, but I did make it clear that I did not want to endorse any particular candidate. I look forward to working with whoever the ultimate winner of the campaign is. Clearly, however, I do have a certain affinity towards one or two candidates, and I just want folks, if they see my name mentioned or a picture of me with a particular candidate, I think it is nothing more than a expression of affinity towards their views. Now, however, that being said, should a candidate come out strongly and support my position on no growth and slow growth in the downtown area, then all bets are off. I'll be happy to join them full force in their campaign. But as of this point, I have no official endorsement of any candidate. The next item is very exciting, and it's perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime event. I will be leaving this meeting, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, at about 8 o'clock. I do have to travel. I've been invited to Washington, D.C. to participate in a signing ceremony and a national press conference, which will be held in Washington with the Secretary of Transportation and several senators. The information on this was supposed to be embargoed, kept secret, but I've looked on the internet, and you know how Washington is with their leaks, and this thing is leaking like a sieve, so I might as well let you all know what's going on. The MTA will be awarded a $2 billion grant to complete the downtown subway and the subway to the sea. This has been, and it's a huge amount of money. I don't think a grant at this level has ever been issued to any transportation agency. Work will begin immediately on those subways. They are all going to be connected to our system. The genesis of this, and I'd like to take some credit for this, goes back to 2010 when the MTA was pulling in all different directions, every director supporting their own particular project. And during my term as chair, we all came together and supported several projects unanimously, and it is with that unanimous voice that the LA MTA spoke, and it was heard in Washington, and they are rewarding and awarding this sum to LA Metro to build one of the greatest, to complete and to continue building one of the greatest transit systems in the entire world. And I will be leaving at 8 o'clock. I'll be there for the press conference at 9 in the morning, and I'll be returning the same day because I don't have a lot of time to spend. But I would beg your indulgence to excuse me at 8. I hope we get most of our work done.
Absolutely. It's an important trip, and congratulations to the MTA. I hope next is funding for a subway station in downtown Glendale.
We're working on it. We'll have another surprise announcement soon, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Najarian. Yes, Mr. Weaver?
Yes, I'd like to put in nomination Michael Oriki as my appointee to the Civil Service Commission. And also to make sure everybody understands, yes, I did endorse Shai Karolian after the election last year, and I've stayed by that endorsement ever since. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. I have just one announcement. Over this weekend and the last 2 days, I, the city manager, Scott Ochoa, and our economic development team were at the Recon 2014 conference. It's a retail, shopping mall, business conference that I believe all my colleagues have attended in the past, and it was the first time for me, and it was a very productive trip, because not only did we meet with those entities that we're actively seeking, or at least would like to be informed about as to whether they're interested in coming to Glendale, but we had the opportunity to learn those entities that are already in Glendale and find out what their plans are, how well or how badly they're doing, and seek other opportunities for the city of Glendale. I think the lesson that we walked away from is that the competition is very tight. Our neighboring municipalities, and we have nothing against them, but in many instances they're going after the same businesses, same entities as are we, and very often those entities are such, their business is such where they can't really be both in Pasadena and in Glendale and Burbank. It's one of those three, and competition again is getting pretty stringent, and we need to bring our A game to the table, because we will miss the boat anyway. So we'll evaluate all the information that we gathered and move forward accordingly. And that's my last comment. What's next, Mr. Clerk?
Next item on the agenda. Well, actually, I'd like to make a brief announcement as well. As was mentioned, that elections are coming up. There will be a state primary election on June 3rd, with which this council voted to consolidate the election for the vacated council seat, currently held by the appointment of Councilmember Quintero. The election is June 3rd. Yesterday was the last day to register if one wishes to vote in this election. So if they're still not registered as of today, they may not vote on June 3rd. They may request a vote by mail ballot up until May 27th. So there is still time for those who may be traveling out of town, who may not be here, or able to attend their polling location to be in Glendale to vote. We want to also let our residents who are registered voters and eligible to vote in this election know that for them to double check through the lavote.net website where their polling locations are. We are distributing door hangers throughout the city with the polling locations listed on that to the homes of all registered voters. And for those who are expecting there to be a lot of activity, as there has been in the past in City of Glendale elections, here at City Hall on our campus, there will not be a vote tallying event because this is an election that is being run by the county. The ballots, after the polls close, the ballots will have to be transferred to Norwalk, California, where they will be counted with all the other ballots throughout Los Angeles County. Whereas in Glendale municipal elections, we've grown accustomed to having a idea of who the winner is by the winners are by about 10 p.m. Or 11 p.m. at the latest in the last few elections. The county tally will take much longer. In fact, the county will take approximately 30 days to certify their final canvass of the election.
When will we have a preliminary count from them?
What do you
will we not know
define
anything for
as
30
preliminary?
days? Well, I mean, will they not tell us anything for 30 days, or will they release some information?
There will be periodic result updates on the county website, as there has been for most of the previous elections.
So I'm asking, my question is, do you know when those start to hit? Do you have any idea?
The evening of the election, but sometimes they will not hit up until, they will not be posted. Sometimes it's been as late as midnight. It's really difficult to say.
I would think you probably shouldn't count anything till the wee hours.
Okay.
So safe to assume if you're planning to attend a party, a post-election party at any of the candidates, it'd probably be wise not to do so? Because it's going to be a long night. It's not at midnight.
I try not to give advice to people who are going to parties. I let them.
Are you going?
I let them decide. To do whatever they're going to do. But I will say this much, and to answer Councilmember Friedman's question more specifically, the first numbers that you will see posted will be the vote by mail ballots, which have been received before whatever the cutoff period is for the county. Those will be the preliminary numbers as they normally are. Again, I do not know what the county's practices will be in tallying the votes this time. But then subsequently they will tally all the ballots as they come in. And again, if anyone has driven from Glendale to Norwalk, even without traffic, it will take a considerable amount of time after the polling locations close, after which they have to be processed and then posted. And to further answer your question, throughout the canvassing period, there will be changes in those numbers on the website. People can go to LA Vote. They can go to glendalevotes.org. We will have a link there to the election results that will direct individuals to the County of Los Angeles Registrar Recorder's website. And I just wanted to let folks know, in case someone shows up banging on the doors of City Hall wondering where all the ballots are, they'll hopefully be well on their way, safe and secure to Norwalk.
Yes, Mr. Nigerian?
So, Mr. Kasakian, just to foreclose any potential issues, who's going to have custody of those ballot boxes for the polling places within our city? Is that entirely county staff?
This is an election run just as any other state primary or general election. It will be the polling location staff appointed by the county registrar recorder.
And the mail-in ballots go directly to them, or does that come to your office?
Nothing comes to our office here at City Hall for this election.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. What's next on the agenda?
Next on the agenda, under consent items, the following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of the council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I'd like to pull item 5E for separate consideration. Do we have a motion for the rest of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second?
May we have a roll call, please?
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinania.
Yes.
Item 5E is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding integrated voice recognition IVR software upgrade for GWP. E1 is a motion authorizing a professional services agreement with Teleworks Inc., TWI Inc., to provide the IVR software and services in the amount of $118,445 and contingency of $11,845 for a total not to exceed amount of $130,290. At 5E2 is a motion authorizing a 3-year software maintenance agreement with Teleworks Inc., TWI Inc., for the summation 360 Teleworks voice platform in the amount of $33,560 for year 1, $34,567 for year 2, and $35,604 for year 3, for a total amount not to exceed $103,731.
Thank you. Mr. Zern, just want to know why,
Mr. Mayor.
Teleworks is the only entity that's being considered.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this system was originally put in 2004, and it was selected as it was I will call it a partner firm with the overall billing system we put in, which was North Star. That's really what runs the entire GWP customer service function. So as the upgrade for this software came available, we made a decision that because we continue to use North Star and we will continue to use that into the future, this remains its partner in the system. Instead of going out and looking for a new software package, one that would not be compatible with our North Star system, we decided to simply negotiate the upgrade of the existing software system.
Is there no other software package that is compatible with the North Star system that's not the one that's the Teleworks one?
There are some systems that will integrate to a certain extent, but none will integrate like this particular system will. This meshes. They were actually designed together.
Oh, I see.
And while I will not use the term that they are inseparable, to have a very seamless system, They work very well together. And since 2004, 10 years, we've had virtually no problems, and the two have worked very well together. That was a great deal of our motivation, to not have to take a chance or a risk on something that is not proven.
I have no more questions. If anyone wants to move item 5E.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Can we have roll call, please?
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. What's next?
Next is oral communications. This is the portion reserved for the 3-minute community event announcements.
Yes, and we have 3 cards today. Leon Mayer, I think, along with Eliza Kalfayan? Elise. I'm sorry. So you are together today. Yes. Good evening.
Hello. Hi, Mayor Sinanian and members of the Glendale City Council and city staff. I'm Elise Kalfayan. I'm the president of the Friends of the Glendale Public Library, and our organization exists to promote and support programs of our community's library, arts, and culture department. And we are very pleased to be presenting next week the author of the definitive and first biography of Cesar Chavez. We're looking forward to that presentation. And I am here also to tell you about the Friends of the Library General Membership Meeting, which is taking place at 5:30 next Wednesday, May 28, in the Glendale Central Library Auditorium. And we're inviting everyone to come hear about our activities over the past year, our fundraising, book sales, our new initiatives, and on how they can get involved in being a friend of the library. That's going to be followed by a reception for community leaders and civic groups who work with us to support library arts and culture. And then at 7 o'clock, with our co-sponsor, the Glendale Latino Association, we're going to be presenting author Miriam Powell, who will talk about her book, The Crusades of Cesar Chavez. And our Vice President for Community Relations, Leon Mayer, is going to tell you a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Sinanian, members of the council and staff. I'm from the Friends of the Library, obviously, and to talk about our event. Cesar Chavez founded a labor union, launched a movement, and inspired a generation. He rose from migrant worker to national icon, becoming one of the great charismatic leaders of the 20th century. 2 decades after his death, Chavez remains the most significant Latino leader in U.S. history. In the first comprehensive biography of Chavez, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Miriam Powell offers a searching yet empathetic portrayal of this famous person. And we're one of the, if not the first city to have Ms. Powell come and talk about the book. She's already been in London, and The Economist, international published from London, has already written up this event, and not the event, but the book, Under the Grapes of Wrath, as they entitled it too. Now, we believe that this will be a great event, and we also, beside expecting the Hispanic community to support our event, and everybody else in the community who support our event, we expect also to have relatives of the Filipino migrant workers who were part of the labor union of Cesar Chavez. I could go on, and I'm going to stop and just urge you all to consider coming to the library. We're going to start at 6 o'clock, and of course, you've heard about the other events preceding that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Bill Wiseman.
Good evening, Mayor Sinanian, council members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale. And as you've already heard several times tonight, yet another reminder, there is going to be an election in 2 weeks on June 3rd. And there are a number of people in Glendale who are involved in the effort to get out the vote through our city clerk's office by passing out these door hangers in our precincts. And the brief announcement that I wanted to make tonight is actually a follow-on to something that Mr. Kasakian said earlier, which is I found out today that the polling place that is printed on the sample ballot that I received in the mail a few days ago is not correct. Right here it says that my polling place is at Valley View Elementary School, but the lists of registered voters that we got from the city clerk's office says that my polling place is at Dunsmore Elementary School. And so I went online to the website that Artie mentioned, which is lavote.net, and there's a button you can press to show what your polling place is. And I went ahead and put my address in there, and it told me my polling place was indeed Dunsmore Elementary. So I called the county registrar of voters to ask them why the polling place printed on my sample ballot was not correct. And they told me that occasionally the county runs into problems with polling places. They think they can use one location, and then they find out for some reason that they're not able to use it. And I don't know if this problem is existing in any other precinct in Glendale other than mine.
Yes.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
He already
So that's why I want to reiterate then what Artie said. You really, if I'm going to be going around putting these door hangers on people's doors and they ask me where their polling place is, I don't want to send them to the wrong location. And their sample ballot should not be sending them to the wrong location as well. So I urge everybody in Glendale who's planning on voting June 3rd, please go to lavote.net, look up your polling place online, and make sure that you're going to the correct polling place. The county representative assured me that the county was going to be sending out postcards to people whose polling place was listed incorrectly. I'm not sure I want to bet on whether that's really going to happen or not. I'm certainly going to be watching for it in the mail, but just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about this, and you check to make sure where your correct polling place is. Thank you.
Thank you. This is actually very troubling because it sounds like our residents are being disenfranchised by the county.
City clerk repeat what he already told us.
Let me finish what I'm saying. Is it correct? So the sample ballots don't contain, in some cases, the correct addresses, right, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, in approximately 5 precincts that we've been able to identify, the county clerk's office has changed the polling location to a different location. As was stated, those can occur for a variety of reasons, all of which we do not know because we are not the ones organizing this.
And that's not something that happens when we run the elections, right? When the city runs them.
It may happen. It has happened in the past, but when we run our own elections, it is far rarer.
Okay. The door hangers that Mr. Wiseman was talking about, do those contain the right polling locations? Do they contain information about polling
Mayor
locations?
Sinanian and Council, to the best of our abilities, we are working to provide the most up-to-date information with the door hangers. That is part of what the purpose of the door hanger project has been. I believe there is one location that I'm aware of where after we labeled the door hangers, but prior to distribution of the door hangers, the polling location changed, so we are updating the labels on those with the current information that we have from the County of Los Angeles.
So this is like a moving target? The county may choose
Unfortunately,
to...
it appears, at least in one area, it was a moving target. Again, I feel somewhat hesitant to speak for the county and what their process is. We have tried to work with them on behalf of our residents to get some sort of consistency as to where the locations are. But as Councilmember Weaver pointed out last week, we had an issue regarding Glen Oaks Canyon, where half of the canyon had to vote outside of the city of Glendale. So you can imagine the consternation and how troubling it is to some residents to have to vote for a council member seat in the city of Glendale and to do that in the city of Los Angeles. We contacted the county. We asked them to move it. We came to an agreement, and we moved that location now to, I believe it's the Joe Bridges Clubhouse in Glen Oaks Park. And then there's also the other half of the canyon will be at the school. So we are doing our best to provide our residents with the right information.
Okay, and we have no doubt that you'll continue doing so because this is the type of fundamental right that our residents will not be deprived of. Yes, Mr. Weaver?
I just wanted to add, I haven't got a postcard yet or a door hanger yet. So.
Yes, Ms.
Two
Friedman?
questions. First, in regards to Glen Oaks Canyon, since we're the one that asked for the location change, if somebody, because their ballots do say to go to Los Angeles, if they go to Los Angeles, are they going to be turned away or will they be allowed to vote there?
If they go to Los Angeles,
To the polling place that's on their ballot. Can we ask the county to allow those people to vote if they follow the instructions that are on their ballot and drive to Los Angeles, to not tell them, no, you can't vote, and we don't know where you're supposed to go, and all the things that they're going to hear?
technically, no citizen can be denied their right to vote. They will have the right to vote provisionally. However, we are planning on making sure that the individuals at that polling location will have ballots. We do not even know, Councilmember Friedman, if that place will be even open. People may show up that day to that location. There may be a sign telling them that it has moved. There may be no sign.
Well, that's my question. For the locations that we know were incorrect on the ballots, can we take it upon ourselves to put up signs directing people with where the correct address is?
For those that were in Glendale and they have moved, we were planning on doing that. For those that are in Los Angeles, we will do our best to urge the county to do that.
We can't just do it, put up a sign?
In another city,
Yeah.
I would check the code, and I am looking at the stare from the city attorney, and I would venture to say likely no.
Well,
we will work our best. I
think
assure
this
you
is a disaster waiting to happen. Unfortunately, not everybody takes the initiative to go to more than one polling place, especially if they don't know where to go, or if their time is short or anything else.
that is one of the reasons why we are doing our best to work with those precincts and those locations, giving people notice. Keep in mind that normally we wouldn't even be involved in this process, but we are doing our best to get the information to the public so they are aware, because we do have an interest in this election as a city.
Well, sure. And I do think that signage will be very important. You know, hopefully it's big and clear and people can find it easily. Well, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Weissman, for the update.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Wiseman, and thank you, Mr. Clerk, for being on top of this. Again, this is not one of those things that can go wrong, possibly. Just isn't. Next on the agenda.
Was there no other card for?
There are no other cards, no other speakers.
In that case, that under adoption of ordinances, 7A is an ordinance amending section 2.04.080 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995 pertaining to the order of business for council meetings. This was introduced on May 13th, 2014 by Councilmember Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, I move 7A.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero? Weaver? Mayor Sinanian?
Yes. Next.
Under action items, 8A is City Attorney regarding City Council meeting schedule for fiscal year 2014-15. 8A1 is a motion establishing its regular meeting schedule and canceling specified council meetings for fiscal year 2014-15.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Before you make the motion, Mr. Weaver, before you use the proposed schedule for the fiscal year 14-15, do have two items of correction. One is in one area it references 13 and 14, and that should be 2014 and 2015. And in addition, the November 11th is a Tuesday, but that is Veterans Day, and it's also a city holiday and state holiday for that matter. By charter, that regular council meeting would naturally kick over to the next day. So I'm asking that the council cancel the November 12th date rather than the November 11th date, because that'll be the regular council meeting for that day. So with those two corrections, I'd ask that the motion be made.
So the record will reflect the corrections that were made by the city attorney. Do we have a motion?
And with that, I'll move 8A1 with the corrections.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Friedman?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero? Weaver.
Aye.
Mayor Sinanian.
Yes. What's next on the agenda?
Under hearings, 9A is Director of Administrative Services Finance regarding proposed City of Glendale budget and citywide fee schedule for fiscal year 2014-15 and establishment of new classifications. 9A1 is an ordinance for introduction providing for certain officers, subordinate officers, assistants, deputies, clerks, and employees of the City of Glendale establishing an official position in the City of Glendale entitled Director of Communications and Community Relations Executives.
Mr. Elliott? Or,
I'll start
Mr.
off,
Ochoa?
sir, and we will be appropriately brief on this particular presentation, if only because the council sat through very diligently 3 study sessions, roughly, I believe, 10 hours of presentation on what is going to effectively be a 2-year budget. And I say that, as you know, because we are examining a reorganization that would change a number of functions and factors within the organization that really would allow us at mid-year budget, February of 2015, to reflect whatever changes occur prior to that date as we head into the 15-16 fiscal year budget. So as I say, really the adjustments we make now will lend themselves to what happens in February of 15 and then onward into the coming fiscal year. So we have a number of items just to summarize and brief you on, and we will have the discussion on, as promised, on the fees and charges that were presented at your last study session. Just by way of the schedule of events, all that has been done, and again, we thank you for your time and attention on the first 3 study sessions covering various areas of our business plan as we move forward to tonight, the seminal event such as it is in our budget adoption process, the actual hearing. Presuming that we can move forward with tonight, the actual budget would be adopted on June 3rd, is really effectively made into more of a ceremonial type of adoption based on all the hard work that the council has brought forward to that time. When we talk about the structure of the budget, as you know, we talk about the council setting the tone, that the council, as the board of directors for this municipal corporation, establish what that framework is, what the long-term vision of the community and the organization, what those are, and then at the same time are able to tie the tactical operations, the day-to-day operations of the City of Glendale to the long-term strategy that you deem appropriate for the community, for the organization. We do this by establishing priorities and getting feedback to help us modulate and update what those priorities are and how we allocate resources to our various departments. So we do lots of different things with respect to keeping score by way of exploiting the beauty of social media, as well as regular scientific studies and surveys that are random sample studies of what our community is saying to us, what our customers are saying to us, and feed that into your priorities for the coming year. You can see the shift based on the information that we have received and feedback from council members. Fiscal responsibility continues to dominate the other priorities, because without fiscal responsibility, as the council has articulated, it's kind of hard to do all the other things. Followed up by having a safe and healthy community. The investment that you put and the emphasis that you put on public safety is very pronounced, as you see all of the accolades and awards that have been achieved and earned by this organization. Followed by exceptional customer service, and something that Mayor Sinanian had referenced in his discussion and comments on ICSC, the notion of economic vibrancy, that not only are we running a race against ourselves, but we're also running in competition with other cities, other jurisdictions in our region, and make no mistake, they've taken note of all the successes that Glendale has had over these last 5 years. So we are focused on trying to push forward and sustain the momentum that we have and not fall into this state of inertia. And then the other major emphasis that's been placed, other priority that's been created, is infrastructure and mobility. And you'll see, as you look at the information that we gather from our customers, what folks are looking for and what they expect from Glendale by way of maintaining a very healthy infrastructure program. And you see that as Bob will talk about the capital investments that will be made in the coming year. But again, we focus on the brutal facts, confronting them as they are, asking residents, asking businesses, what do they think about our performance, our operations. And again, we are very pleased and grateful to our customers because they continue to say at very high numbers that they are either satisfied or very satisfied with the level of services that are being provided at a clip of 85%. 73% of our respondents are saying that Glendale is an 8 or higher as a place to live. And 96% feel safe in Glendale. More than 2/3 believe that the City Council is making the right choices and heading in the right direction. And certainly we are very pleased and proud of that. As I noticed, or as I mentioned previously, we do look to social media as a means of helping to keep score and fleshing out what the details are in our performance. As you may well know, increasingly folks are skeptical of actual paid professional advertising and are much more at an overwhelming, vastly overwhelming ratio dependent upon what recommendations are from their peer groups. And so when we talk to folks about being a safe city, a hip city, a healthy city, these are all the accolades that come bouncing back to us by the people that live here, that know it best, and that feed that information back to you. When we ask folks what their priorities are as they match up with City Council's priorities, again, public safety, critically important, infrastructure and utilities, maintaining that value proposition is important. But again, fiscal responsibility, something that you have the dogged responsibility for, to make sure that that is the baseline that pays for these other things that are important to our community members. And it spans the entire spectrum, where arts and culture very much important in that spectrum of services that we provide. We talked in our budget study sessions about the forecast for the general fund and really trying to plot that out over an even more elongated period of time, going to 7 years. And you've come accustomed to looking at this particular chart, understanding what happens from year 14-15, the year that we're heading into, all the way out to fiscal year 2021. You see a very conservative, though not pessimistic, view of what the future holds in terms of growth of general fund resources, what our baseline expenditures due to very solid management from all of our department directors and their management teams in the 13 departments that we have. That we're able to hold the line as best we can on those baseline expenditures. You see the bell curve of increasing PERS costs as PERS recoups what their losses were and establishes the funding for the longevity of its members, and then the leveling off of those PERS costs as time goes on, and ultimately what the impact is for our operations. That we're doing the responsible thing, putting money into CIP for the general fund, not just the utility and enterprise funds, making sure that our inter-service funds are healthy and erasing any deficits, providing funding for the certificates of participation for the police department, our police station building, the police headquarters, and looking at our OPEB liability. As you know, that will soon be calculated and netted against our assets and our balance sheet under the upcoming GASB rules, and so we have to put that money aside. You can see what the overall appropriations are expected to be for the coming years and what the net surplus or deficit is intended to be. And you can see in this area we're dealing with amounts of money that are relatively small, that if we wanted to take year by year and muddle along, truly we could, based on the overall size of the budget and our resources. But taking stock of the redevelopment agency loan, getting that back from the state of California, that ultimately leads us this area where the deficits are even more middling, leading out to those out years where we start to head back into the black. The point being that if we lose the GRA loan vis-a-vis the State Department of Finance, as they flirt with the idea of reinstating the loan because we've done all the things that we were supposed to do, asked to do under redevelopment dissolution, the bait and switch that they are using now to say, well, we'll let you reinstate the loan, but we're going to arbitrarily decide what the discount rate, what the interest rate is going to be on that loan, going back to the early 1970s, whereas originally we felt that loan was valued at $66 million, then using the methodology that the Department of Finance had trotted out, not contained in the statute, mind you, but that was espoused by the Department of Finance administratively. That number has fallen down to about $45 million, losing $20 million in value of that receivable that the city was due. And then, as you know, almost laughably, outrageously, the State Department of Finance had come back and said, actually, we believe that the value of that loan is zero. Since then, they've come back and in great magnanimous gesture decided that really it's worth about $15 million. The original principal was 13.7. They're saying that based on a discount rate of 0.28%, what the LAIF rate, the local agency investment fund rate, is today, that if you apply that quarterly compounded, that would take our 13.7 principal and make it about $15 million, a far cry from the $45 million. Now, why are they focused on that? Obviously, it's because that's the lowest rate that they can put their hands on and say that loans made back in the 1970s and throughout the life of the redevelopment agency, we're going to value it on 2015 standards. Indeed, the LAIF rate at some points had been well in excess of 10%. It had been as high as 4 and 5% before the crash. So truly, the State Department of Finance, at the behest of the governor's office, is making it up as they go. And at the end of the day, we're locked in a negotiation with them to the extent that the loan was dead, then the loan was resurrected, then the loan was discounted. Now we're negotiating over how much value the residents of Glendale will receive for money that had been set aside, that had been budgeted for their benefit, how much that actually will yield in the coming years. We have received the $1.2 million from the state. We're hoping that we will get the rest of those monies. You can see that if we do, again, the deficits are middling. They are literally, without any over-exaggeration, are effectively rounding errors. But that does mean that we are effectively flat over the coming years. That's not necessarily a good place for an organization to be. Again, we can muddle along even at these numbers, let alone at the net numbers following the redevelopment loan repayment. But as you look at the good, the bad, the ugly for City of Glendale and our budget, we are stable, and all the progressive programs and services and procedures that we have put in place are allowing us to take advantage increasingly. We should be further along than we are as we try to catch up on technology, but increasingly we'll be able to accelerate and absorb the losses of our organization, if you compare 10 years ago to today, to be able to absorb those much more effectively and unnoticeably to our customers. So we are stable, we are progressive, and we're approaching that structural balance that is critically important to the City Council that you've articulated again and again. We've weathered the fiscal storm, and now again we're effectively treading water at our current levels, which means that at current levels there's no new programming. We do have a risk of losing key personnel, and that we could just wade through the troubles, the difficulties, the challenges that we find ourselves in, because we are big enough as an organization, as a community, to withstand, and we have withstood that fiscal storm. We can just wade through in that long slog. But that doesn't mean that we're breaking any new ground. That doesn't mean that we're pioneering new areas and new services that our residents and businesses desire. Thus, the ugly that leaves us with is looking at that GRA loan, whether or not we'll get that repaid by the State Department of Finance. We're hoping that they will be reasonable and not continue with the bait-and-switch mentality, and the notion that basically if we could get the state just to leave us alone, we'd be much better off. The fundamental decision for the City Council going into this budget was effectively option one, maintaining the status quo, because as I say, we could tread water, and the benefit there is that we know what this looks and feels like, and we can make adjustments each year and kind of replay this scenario again and again until things begin to brighten up. Things are not bad. Things are just somewhat stagnant because of the pressures that are on all of our resources. Thus, we look at option two, which is this notion of finding a new path. We have discovered that we are very resilient. We have discovered that investments in technology have allowed us to do more with fewer people, and we think that if we can continue that theme by implementing an incentive to reduce the size of the organization, that we can generate some flexibility and capacity within the organization to either to come back to market with the workforce, to look at restoration or reinvestment of services, and generally be able to handle whatever comes our way, be it from the state of California or the overall general economy. You have, in that first study session, endorsed this notion of option 2, that we would go try to find this new path and reorganize the organization yet again. And that's what we are endeavoring to do based on the adoption of this particular budget. Now, to give you the numbers as to where we've been, again, this is very summary, very high level, based on all of the good work that you have done. So I'll turn it over to Bob, and he will walk through all the different funds, revenues, and appropriations. Bob?
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to first thank my staff who put in countless hours in putting this year's budget together, and all the department liaisons that put in a tremendous effort in putting this all together. I really appreciate all their efforts. In looking at the general fund recap, we've shown this to you in prior study sessions, but just to recap, basically looking where we were last year in terms of what our revenue base was, and all the variations that we plugged into this year's budget that gave us the estimated resources of the $174 million. As Scott said, we have a little bit of use of fund balance. We include that in for the $174.5 million. As we showed before, we have the data center upgrade. That's a one-time appropriation of $2 million out of the general fund reserves, as well as the $5 million for the central library renovation. Looking at the appropriation side, we have the total where we started was the $170 million. These are all the variations that we plugged into this year's budget. As you can see, the increase in the PERS as we looked at through the forecast, the amount of the cost sharing that's offset from the employees, and they contribute back to the employer's share. Some of the other increases in terms of the workers' compensation, trying to get that fund back to a healthy status, and just increases in our fleet charges from the general fund to fully fund our fleet replacements as they come due. That brings us to the $174.5 million of our recurring appropriations for the general fund. And again, those one-time use of fund balance, the data center and the central library, giving us a total appropriation of $181.5 million. As you look at it as a basic summary, using the $7.4 million in fund balance for this given year against the revenues and appropriations, our forecast to where that will leave us at the end of the fiscal year 14-15 would be 30.7%. I believe we started the year at 35.8, or we're projecting to end this current fiscal year at 35.8, so it would be a reduction down to 30.7. And as we've said in the past, the council has a target of 35% and a floor of 30, so this is getting pretty close to the floor.
What you see then in terms of conclusions for 14-15, we do remain operationally balanced. We can, with the repayment of the GRA loan, even the reduced GRA loan, we're able to maintain that operational balance that we absolutely need and get closer to the structural balance that we strive for. But we also have opportunities to use, based on the use of fund balance, to maintain that budget, general fund budget in balance. When we look at the $500,000 that Bob had mentioned, the use of fund balance, there are some short-term fixes that we could implement. Personnel actions like hiring freezes and/or additional program cuts. I don't know that we are there, given that if we move towards that option 2, we would be able to save considerably more than the $495,000 in the use of fund balance to balance out the coming fiscal year's budget. The idea, again, is to incentivize the separation through retirement or severance to shrink the size of the organization, even if only for a while, to make up or to free up capacity and flexibility within the budget to do a number of things, balancing the market dynamics within our employment base, and being able to reinvest where possible in service levels such that the community and the council want to see. Let us take you now through the rest of the overall budget, and Bob will carry you through there.
Okay, just to summarize our total investment in the this year's budget, again, I ran through the general fund in terms of what the total appropriations were and the variances that we have from last year to this year. And then within our different categories of our different fund types, special revenue funds, debt service funds, capital improvement funds, enterprise funds, and the internal service funds, which you can see all the total appropriations, the lion's share of the budget, or about half the budget, is through the enterprise funds, which are the electric, water, sewer, refuse, and parks enterprise funds. Considerable increases in those fund types, primarily for capital spend via the bond issues that we did this last year. So the grand total appropriation for 14-15 is the $832,793,000. And I will run through those details in a second. As we look at the total authorized positions, again, you've seen this. We're looking at 1,583 positions, down from a high in 05-06 of almost 2,000, which is about a 26% reduction in that time frame. Looking at the detail of the general fund by department, we've gone through this in terms of what some of the increases, decreases for in administrative services finance. This is primarily the transfer of the utility finance folks back to the utility. In fire, we have increase of new firefighters, some overtime, a big increase in workers' comp, and that's pretty common throughout the general fund, is the increase in workers' compensation.
To shore up the fund deficit over a period of time.
Correct. Library, arts, and culture, there's some changes here. A new library supervisor, increases in some of the ISD charges that we went through in detail. Looking at management services, this was the big decrease here was moving the economic development folks out to a new fund, 215, to better account for their level of effort and funds. PD had a little bit of increase, primarily from workers' compensation. Public Works had some a few FTE reductions for the $373,000. Transfers, this again was primarily the library going out to the capital projects fund, and then again the $2 million for the data center conversion. That's the highlights of some of the decreases and increases in the general fund.
And the blank for retirement incentives means there's no
Correct.
change.
Correct. So going to the complete list of special revenue funds, we went through all this detail. I could run through pretty quickly as we have some of the larger increases with like CDBG. There's really just reductions, some of the salaries in programming. Glendale Youth Alliance, that's a reduction in hourly wages. We covered all that detail when we went through these funds, so I won't bore you again. Economic development, again, 215, the new fund we've set up for the economic development effort, Phil Lansafame and company. The reduction, this is no new grants in the special grant funds. So as we get those, we'll bring those to you. That's why there's a reduction there. Within all our transportation funds, we talked about some of the new bus purchases and fare box that's going on, and that cost is spread through many of these transportation funds. I think of note in here, special events is just a reduction in overtime budgeted in this fund per se, and there's some other reductions, but nothing super material. And lastly, the emergency medical is a little bit of reduction in that fund for a grand total of $96.8 million in your special revenue funds, which is an increase in total of about $6.8 million from last year. Debt service funds, we're actually down to a single debt service fund with activity. The capital lease fund was paid off. That was the MSB lease for the earthquake retrofit. We do have the police building, the COPs that we restructured last year. So that's the debt service budget for paying that debt. Total is $3 million. Looking at the capital projects funds, capital improvements, we went through in detail all the projects from all the different funds. This is just a summary by area and function. In Fund 401, the CIP for the general fund, and some of the reductions from last year or increases from last year. Again, the primary news for this year is the Central Library project. State gas tax, there was just some minor reductions in some of the projects, and within the parks mitigation fund, the Stingle Field project is budgeted and have $760,000. Within the mitigation funds and Quimby Fund, this project here, the $350,000 was the Palmer Park project, and we went through all that detail when we covered that. So your total CIP outside of the enterprise funds is $15.2 million. Moving to your enterprise funds, and we do have quite a few, and some of that is charter driven. We do have the recreation fund. There's a turf replacement built into that, $4.5 million. Some of the larger projects within the sewer fund, we have a large amount of money that goes to the Hyperion plant through the sewer fund, so there's an increase there. The refuse fund has a slight decrease, and that's a variety of things with reductions in some areas and increases in others. The GWP Electrics Fund, there's some increases in contractual services and purchase power. That's primarily the increase of the $6.5 million there. The depreciation fund is where we budget the capital for the utility. So we went through all the different types of CIP for electric and in the different categories. There's a total of $60 million we're looking to program for this coming year. We set up a new fund in both water and electric for customer paid projects so we can better track that and not commingle it with the city projects. And then within the Waterworks Revenue Fund, that's basically the operation of the water fund or water utility. The depreciation fund is the capital component. Again, that was $29 million, which is the water fund capital projects that we went through in detail. And lastly, the Fire Communications Fund, that's the Verdugo Communications, which operates the dispatch for not only Glendale, but the Tri-Cities, Burbank, and Pasadena, as well as, I believe, 11 or 12 other contract cities throughout the region. So our enterprise fund total is $444 million for the year. Going into our internal service funds, and we spent some time there, we have the fleet fund, which is responsible for maintaining and replacing the vehicles outside of the enterprise funds, but this is for all the governmental activity. Slight decrease there. The helicopter fund has a large reduction, primarily because we're not buying a helicopter this year, so the $3 million was from last year when we bought the helicopter. ISD, there's some increases and decreases in the three different funds that we have with ISD. And there's a detailed rate program that we run and create the charges here. Again, the data center project is built in here for replacement of that effort, and some other variations in terms of increases in M&O and capital outlay. Workers' compensation, we raised the rates as we talked about through to all the various user departments. That's primarily the increase coming into that fund, so we can pay the claims as they increase and get that fund healthy. Medical insurance funds, these funds are pretty self-explanatory what they're for. We do have increases in most of them. The medical fund primary in terms of what the increases are for our benefits. For our total internal service funds, we have $91.8 million budgeted. Now, on to the fun part. Fees. We brought the discussion to fees to you last week. We presented the fee study overview, the results, the estimated fees, and had some discussion in terms of where we were. The process we went through was we did an RFP for the consultant, did over about 2.5 months, went through the process of identifying all the costs and then put that all into a number of different documents to present to the council as well as to the public. Had some discussion last week, and we'll show you what the input from not only the council on May 13th, but some of the individual meetings we had, and we've blended that into the discussion tonight. The departments that participated in the fee study was Public Works, Community Development, Fire Department, as well as the Police Department. It was a combination of a number of things, but this was the primary focus of the fee study as we went through it with the consultant. As we showed the council last time, the results of the fee study was the total potential full cost recovery was the $15 million. With the current fees, we project we would collect about $5.2 million, meaning there's about $9.9 million in subsidy in the fee structure that we have now based on the current fees, and that is shown in the percent of capture on the far right column in terms of what we collect of what the total cost is. Just to recap some of the fees, there's a total of 2,100 fees that we have on our fee schedule. Within the fee study, we looked at a number of new fees, 93 increases to existing fees, 297. There was 51 fee decreases. Outside of the fee study, we had 19 new proposed fees, 69 proposed increases to existing fees, and CPI increases. That's just applying a 1% inflator to a number of existing fees. There was also 1,387 fees that were no proposed changes to. So within the increase and within the structure of all the fee schedules, we would apply a 1% CPI adjustment. So the fees are raised up by that amount, which is pennies in most cases. So what we brought to you last week was the initial summary of estimated new fees, with option B being staff recommendation, and that's a combination of full cost recapture in some cases, it's reduced fees in others. We put that all together. Again, the full cost would have been $9.9 million. Staff recommended $3.2 million, combining all the different recommendations from all the different departments. Option C was phasing in over 3 years, which I think we showed you last week. Since then, and as I talked about, the option A was full cost recovery. Option B was the various increases. Since then, we've had some input from council as well as departmental changes, and we've brought that back, which is a revised summary of the estimated fees, which raised the total potential recapture to about $3.3 million. Now, based off input that we got last week from council in the study session, and based off some of the meetings we've had, we have a number of fees, and they've listed out by fee number at the bottom of this chart. These are some examples based off the input that we got from council in terms of increasing in development fees to primarily full cost as we move forward.
And the theme generally would be that the planning fees, any development-related fees that are revolve around larger scale commercial multifamily development, individual council members that we have met with have asked to increase that to the full cost so that there's not a discount or subsidy to those merchant builders or commercial developers, and yet still maintain the staff recommendations for projects of size and scope that are generally for homeowners and small types of projects. The caveat there, as you can see, is a discussion that was asked for among council as it pertains to historic preservation and Mills Act requests. The full cost for that, as you see along the bottom, is $10,539. Staff had requested a lower amount that demonstrates what we have sensed in the past, a desire to encourage this type of behavior. As you know, as you set fees, you can use the fees to encourage or discourage behaviors. The staff recommendation was there at the lower amount to encourage Historic Preservation Mills Act. However, the opposite argument would be that the Historic Preservation Mills Act contract is an entirely private benefit to the extent that it accrues to a private property owner, and although they would pay a higher upfront fee to Mills Act a given property, the ongoing property tax relief exists for the duration of their ownership and accrues to that private property owner as a private benefit. Truly, that encapsulates the best public policy debate that you all have with respect to setting fees. Using the fee structure to encourage or discourage based on how you view the service, how you view the benefit.
So let me ask a question, and maybe Hassan knows the answer to this. If somebody had bought their house in 1930 and they haven't sold it since, and they come in for to place it on the historic register, and even if they want the Mills Act, what kind of property tax reduction could they be getting? I mean, they could be getting less than $11,000, significantly less, correct? Because their taxes would be so low at that point.
Without guessing on the numbers, I would say that yes, it would be very low. It would not be very high if that was the scenario. And that is not always the scenario.
Right, that's not always the scenario. And I know if somebody buys a house now and they're paying $800,000 for it, and they do a Mills Act contract, they could get quite a reduction in their property tax. But I'm concerned about raising the fee to that amount. I agree with staff that it should stay in the $3,000 range because we have no way of pulling out those older properties that are still the same owners that are not getting a great benefit from the Mills Act. And we do want to encourage people to put properties on the historic register. And the idea of the Mills Act is not to give people a windfall, it's to use that money to keep the house in good condition. And a lot of times these older historic houses take quite a lot of money. If you're going to fix your windows, you can't just go out and buy vinyl windows like some other people are allowed to do. You have to go and do a historic repair that's really in keeping with character. Sometimes that requires hiring craftspeople. You can't just go and buy a Milgard window. So the whole idea behind the Mills Act isn't to give cash in people's pocket, it's so that they can put it back to maintaining historic properties. So I'm against raising the fee to, I can't even read what the suggestion is. I agree with the staff recommendation for the historic preservation process.
So what do you want it at?
I wanted with the staff's
3,000?
Yeah.
If I may clarify, the full cost as estimated by the fee study was $10,539.
Right.
The current fee is $1,250. We had initially proposed to raise that to $3,000.
Right, and you had council input from somebody to raise it to the $10,000.
Correct.
And that did not come from me, and I oppose that. I would agree with the $3,000 because people will get a property tax reduction if they get the Mills Act. That will equal that pretty quickly. But again, that money is really to go into keeping the additional expense that it can often be to maintain a historic property.
Yes, Mr. Najarian.
Well, I'm the one who suggested we go to that higher figure because it is a clear benefit to the homeowner, whether they bought the home many years ago or whether they're new owners. Someone who bought the home in 1930 and whose home is still eligible for the Mills Act clearly exhibits a desire to maintain that home with or without applying for the Mills Act. However, even should they at that level apply for the Mills Act, they've got a home that is tax-free. When they put that home on the market, nobody lives forever. That home is going to be a home. I've got two homes that I'm looking at. They're both well preserved. One has a Mills Act home that has zero taxes every year. That will increase the value of that home tremendously, tremendously. We put our staff on these homes and they do extensive research. There's no reason why it shouldn't be at the full force, the full freight on that thing. It's a huge benefit that they get. They pay zero taxes.
Not zero. They don't pay zero
It's
taxes.
It's not zero, but it's 40%. It's like 40%.
Up to a 60% reduction.
So it's 40% of what they otherwise.
Yeah, it's a certain percentage, and there's a complex formula that we apply, and it's only for a period of time. It's not in perpetuity. The Mills Act contract. I think Tim knows the details.
people a new buyer will get about a 50% tax reduction. It's actually based on a complex formula of a real or hypothetical cost-benefit analysis of having a historic home, how much you can rent it out for versus the presumed higher expenses.
The other thing about these houses is that a lot of times the reason that historic houses are demolished is because they may be very small and on large lots. It may be, even with the property tax reduction, that somebody could make more money demolishing one of these properties. And we see, we've had projects that people said were historic in their, in our downtown that now are going to be torn down because the developer can get more money demolishing a small structure and putting in a large structure. And the same thing holds with single-family homes. And we see all over Los Angeles houses being torn down constantly because they're small houses on large lots in places like Truesdale Estates and Beverly Hills and Glendale. So it's not always the case that that Mills Act, always pushes things to where it's more money to list that house. So I just think that we're really. And not everybody has $10,000 to list their home. A lot of people don't have that money, but they may be in a historic house. So I just think if we really want to get houses that are really historic listed, we should keep that fee on the lower side.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, one of the components that we took into account in making recommendations to subsidize or not subsidize some fees was also the number of cases we get for that particular item. In terms of historic preservation and Mills Act contracts, we get maybe a dozen a year, not that many, and then the same goes with historic districting because we might get one every 2 years or so. We don't get a slew of those cases, so we thought the amount of subsidy was justified with the amount of. However, in the end, it's the council's discretion and policy. This was staff's analysis of maintaining a certain incentive, and then seeing the benefits may outweigh the loss that we would have as a result of the subsidizing. However, it's in the end the council's discretion.
Mr. Weaver?
I agree with the 3,000. Trying to encourage historic house more to come on board, so I take the lower.
I agree with Mr. Nigerian in the sense that whoever enjoys the benefits of having their property enacted gets really a big upper hand on everyone else. But 10,000 versus 3,000 is there's a huge delta there, so maybe we could all agree around a number in between that's palatable to all of us.
It may be worthwhile then for the council if you are not if there's not a consensus to go all the way to the full freight, would be to inch your way to that. So one of the options is, you remember option C was to do a 3-year phase-in towards the full cost, which would be, in this case, I believe, even if you were to start, instead of, if you look at your booklet on I think it's page 7 under planning and fee number 51, historic preservation process Mills Act request, you see along the line, again, the $10,539 is the full freight. The current fee is $1,250. The staff recommendation is $3,000. The next set of columns represent the 3-year phase-in, the staff recommendation. But if you recall from your study session last time, we had also included a phase-in for the full freight cost. My point being that if you were inclined to adopt the $3,000, which is a sizable increase over the $1,250 that it is today, understanding that you would march towards $12,500 over the next 2 to 3 years, you could then measure whether or not, or assess whether or not it's acting as a discouraging factor, a significantly discouraging factor to folks Mills Acting their home.
One other thing to keep in mind is that when you're going to do a Mills Act application, there's a fair amount of money people have to put forward into research into their homes that can cost several $1,000s. I mean, it can cost, $3,000 to $10,000 to. What I've normally seen is in the $5,000 to $6,000 range to get that historic homework done and research done to present to justify the Mills Act. So there's money people are putting out, serious money. I don't support moving towards a $10,000 fee. I just don't. I mean, we can vote on it. If I lose, I lose. But I'm okay with going up to $3,000, but not to phase up to $10,000 when people are spending another $5,000 to research their homes. We're trying to encourage listings. We still only have one commercial property on the historic register, as far as I know.
I don't know from the top of my head. I don't know from the top of my head. We do think that once we do the commercial survey, we will have more.
So people aren't banging the doors down to list these commercial properties either. And so if we make it more expensive, they're certainly not going to do it.
I would propose just agreeing on 5,000, just sticking with it, not escalate to 10,000 in any foreseeable future. Just a good number between what currently is being paid, $1,250, and what it actually costs staff to process an application, which is $10,539. $5,000 is.
One other thing, let me mention: if you spend that $5,000 to research your home, and we turn it down, or the Historic Preservation Commission turns it down, there's no refund. And that we haven't turned down a lot, but not everything gets to us. HPC does turn down properties, and people then have spent money, and they're just out of luck.
But that, of course, that applies to all the fees that are paid. No one gets reimbursed.
I'm just saying that if we make it too onerous, I just think that there are people who can't write a $10,000 check.
Well, the current fees are zero.
No,
No,
$1,250.
$1,250, yeah.
What am I looking at then? The chart.
Mr. Najarian?
The reason, look, let's not kid ourselves. The reason people apply for Mills Act is for the tax relief that they get. If they cared about the home, they can continue caring about the home. But they want to get the tax relief in perpetuity, or whatever the particular formula is. So this is clearly a money issue for them, and there's no reason why we should subsidize it. And our rate of overturning or denying Mills Acts is very rare. I can remember perhaps one over the last 4 years that we turned down.
That's right. And I must say, though, that the HPC has become very restrictive about conditioning the Mills Act contracts with a specific restoration plan and an improvement plan that will, with a program over the years to improve the house. So that there is a plan that goes with the Mills Act contract that the property owner is obliged to follow, or else the Mills Act contract can be rescinded. That is really become a big part of the practice.
I do think it's just in fairness for all, too, there are a lot of folks that preserve historic homes, historic properties, because they love historic homes and historic properties. So.
As opposed to the Mills Act.
And we have asked people to do a fair amount of construction sometimes when we've done Mills Act work. I remember we had one recently, we had them take down something in the back of a stairway and do stuff like that, and that costs money as well. So, I understand what Mr. Najarian is saying. I don't think there's anything wrong with what he's saying. I mean, there definitely are people that are out there benefiting from this tax rebate. So, I hear you. I don't...
Compromise?
5,000, I think, is a good number. I think we can walk away feeling like we've done the responsible
Would
thing.
you step it in over 3 years so that the next couple years is 3,000, then it goes up to 5,000, give people a chance to...
Well, then what's going to happen is the staff is still going to have to... the city is going to have to contribute $10,540 towards processing these, and everyone's going to come in at the same time, so it's actually going to be counterproductive for the city, from the city's perspective.
Well, again, the beauty of this exercise is that you get to do it each and every year. And so to the extent that whatever number you arrive at, you'll likely see the impact of it one way or another. If the indication is that it's going to stay low and then ultimately grow higher, to the mayor's point, I think you may see folks want to get in under the wire as quickly as they can. And just the opposite is true. If you go too high, then no one's going to want to do it.
Right, and that's why, I think in all fairness, we would have gone to 10,539, but we don't want to create a preclusive effect and stop people from wanting to do mill. There's obviously a positive element, a positive impact on the city by encouraging to have historical.
Let me ask a question, something that make me feel more comfortable. So this fee, let's say it's $5,000. Do people pay that up front before they go to HPC? And that if they don't get recommendation and they go away, that money is gone?
No, they have to pay it for us to process it. That's the cost of processing the Mills Act contract.
How much does it cost for them just to file the application?
It depends on, again, like you mentioned, sometimes the properties they require extensive research and they'll be a lot more costly, and sometimes it's the research is not as extensive and the record is a lot more clear. So, but they do fluctuate. But it's not uncommon for us when we do this kind of analysis. It takes up anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to hire someone to actually do the research for us if we have to do it.
But I mean, when they come in and they file their application with the
Yes.
city for an HPC hearing, what do they pay for that?
They pay the full, if they apply for a Mills Act contract, they'll have to pay the full fee. In addition to that, they'll have to apply for anything else that comes with it. There's usually more than one application.
Can we do something where they pay upon approval? They pay one set just to get in the door and hear it, and then if HPC turns it down, they've paid $1,500 or something.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think that wouldn't be legal. Because you've got to, if you're charging someone for the cost of providing a service, you've got to charge it to them regardless of whether or not they get the approval that they're seeking.
We do that with developers. I mean, they pay once they pay a
well, they pay the
impact
impact fee if their project gets approved. Yeah, they pay the
Can't
impact
this be some kind of
No.
impact fee on the Mills Act?
But it's not. It's a cost of processing the application.
It's the cost of providing the service of processing their applications.
Whereas the impact never arises if the project is approved.
Can we pull this particular item out and try to get some impact from the preservation community before we vote on this tonight?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of council, again, this is the public hearing on the item, so you're certainly free to have additional discussion on the actual budget adoption hearing on the 3rd. This is only to give staff direction
so that we could,
on what to bring back.
If we decide something tonight and the Historic Preservation
Well, you're not deciding anything
Commission
tonight.
or
You're not
committee-
deciding anything tonight. So
Okay, so they can still come and they can voice their
Correct.
concerns. Because I would love to hear from HPC members who have been doing this month in and month out, and from the Glendale Historic Society, and see what they think.
So that's some good info. I also would like to know the value of the homes for which a Mills Act was issued. If not the most recent sale, then a value. Just go on Zillow or whatever. Just you don't have to do a lot of research. Just Zillow or Redfin. Just type it in. How much is that house worth?
We will sample the Mills Act contracts that we processed over the last year and just over the last 12 months, and we will just give you the numbers associated.
And I know Mr. Najarian has to leave in 5 minutes, so just to rush this issue, the appeals to Planning Commission on City Council, this increase is obviously quite dramatic. And I imagine appeals to commissions, at least commissions, and on top of that add to City Council are probably more frequent than any Mills Act applications that come to the city. Does this apply to single family homes?
This would be
on all appeals. This would be on all appeals. Again, with appeals, it varies. Sometimes they only appeal because they disagree, and that doesn't require much of any work other than the record of the hearing that they went through or the decision that they went through, and an appeal form that they say they disagree, and some sort of a rationalization for the disagreement. So the appeals may sometimes be complicated, but oftentimes they're not, because the hearing, the decision has the record of all the details in place.
But you're saying, so if it's not complicated and the work that's involved for staff is minimal, so there a lesser fee may be?
No, for the
levied?
applicant it's not. For staff it is, again, because sometimes staff has prepared a decision or a recommendation for a decision in great detail, and then that decision is being appealed. Now staff needs to go back and reevaluate everything and prepare a new argument against the argument. So that becomes a much more complicated process for staff than the appellants in that case.
I understand. I wouldn't support this amount because, again, at least as it applies to single-family homes, because this is, 700% increase in the fee, and this happens. People have to appeal to the commission. They have to appeal to council.
What page are you on?
I'm looking at page 22. It's the first.
I think I'm looking at a different
slide. Slide 22.
Number 24 in your booklet?
24. Okay. No.
And by the way, the recommended The proposed fees by staff was $2,000, so someone asked for full $8,120.
That would be me. I just wanted to make sure that we've seen a lot of frivolous appeals where a neighbor is unhappy with their neighbor and it's a neighbor dispute, and for a very minimum cost, they can delay and really harass the applicant for months, if not years. And that, my only thought was, let's make sure that there's a serious objection, a valid concern over the appeal issue, rather than just a way to stick it to your neighbor.
And that's a legitimate concern, of course, but this would be sort of fixing a smaller problem and creating a bigger one, in a sense, because then we'd be victimizing those people who have legitimate appeals, and they would have to pay 7 times more.
So just so I'm clear, you're okay with the staff recommendation to go to 2,000?
I'm okay. I'm totally okay with
So
the
it's
staff
just, okay,
recommendation.
I just wanted to
I
be
mean,
sure.
but the difference, 2,000 versus $8,120.
Can I ask a question? What is non-regulatory curb painting? I saw the fee for that, and I have no idea what non-regulatory curb painting is. I'm curious. I mean, there's like 5 fees for it, and it's something I've never heard of.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council member Friedman, oftentimes we get requests from property owners who want the curb adjacent to the driveway aprons painted red, so they won't block them from getting out of their driveways. Essentially, it's non-regulatory, and we'd like to charge them for every 25 feet. So that's why you
Someone
have
can request 50 feet
Yes, ma'am.
a public street just so they can get out of it. And we say yes to that?
They can request it. Doesn't mean
Okay.
we say yes. And actually,
But
rarely any request of that nature, no.
But this would be a deterrent.
Now, it's a very small fee, so people don't get alarmed who want to do this. They're asking for $20. I think it's something like that, so it's a really small fee. I was just curious. I mean, if you're really that annoyed by it, I think $20 sounds very reasonable.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have one, too. I got an email this morning from a constituent on the preferential parking, and I checked out to find out what had happened. It was $6. In December, we increased it to $25. And now, and it was passed in December, they started collecting in January. Now we're proposing another increase 2 months after that up to $31. It seems, we just jacked it from 6 to 25 2 months ago, and then, or a few months ago, and now to go up to 31 just seems too much at one time.
I agree with Mr. Weaver. I think we should leave them at the amount that we set in December.
That's the preferential and the guest.
Yeah, I agree. You?
I do agree. I do agree with that.
That's something that
We can
there's
make that note.
consensus.
I think, just for clarification, I think we already had that. We just didn't have time to make that update.
Oh,
So
thank
we'll
you.
make that
Heard
change.
you loud and clear.
And we'll incorporate that into the final.
You made some constituents happy.
So, if I may, in terms of the issues related directly to the budget, are we going to have discussion on June, on the day of the, no, I guess that's June 3rd, right?
June 3rd is the budget adoption.
Are we going to have discussion, or is this?
Council's
the time?
pleasure. This is a public hearing
Just in your adoption.
for the council to discuss, as well as to take public comment on the budget. And then whatever the net sum of all of that is, presuming that there's some consensus either tonight or going forward, that would be all in your June 3rd adoption.
It sounds like the only thing that there's really not consensus on is the Mills Act issue, and I would like, between now and June 3rd, I'm going to reach out to the historic preservation community and just get some feedback and bring that in with me. They may or may not come here, but maybe by then I'll have either consensus with you or
Okay.
just know where I
Well, we're
stand.
just introducing it tonight, so
Yeah.
Right.
2 weeks we can modify when we adopt.
But it sounds like we have consensus on everything else, for the most part.
I have one question before I leave. Back to the budget, Mr. Ochoa, on slide 9, where we talk about that GRA loan that got snipped down to how much, 13 million or 14 million?
That is currently what the 15 million is what the State Department of Finance is telling us today.
Well, we're counting on, looks like we're counting on a lot more being paid.
Absolutely we are.
Those out years. so-
Because my advice to you is, to the extent that the Department of Finance is very obviously making up their rules as they go, that we fight that. And until we get the cold dead hands prying, or they're prying our cold dead hands off of that loan, it's here to make that compelling case.
That's just one comment. The other comment is on the library renovation and the data center upgrade. So that $7 million are coming from our reserves.
Correct, sir.
Right. Do we have a plan to repay those reserves? Is that a loan against which the library impact fee revenue would replenish? Or are we just saying, here it is, this is our gift forever?
Well, this is your investment into that infrastructure, but to the extent that we save money and we generate year-end savings, those funds would come back and the council could elect to put those back into the general fund reserve. Further, as we look at the data center, once that is done and once we are able to move towards a Tier 2 system for our ERP, that actually will start to generate savings for us on a going forward basis, very significant savings perhaps. That could come back to the general fund as well.
I have several.
Please excuse me.
Have a good evening. Safe flight.
Do you have any cards on this? Do you have any cards on this item, Mr. Mayor?
I have no cards, but I do have questions that I need to ask. So, if I were to find information regarding electricity fee transfers, which slide would that be on, or would it be, where would that information be contained? We're still transferring fees to the general fund, right?
Fees or?
I'm sorry, revenue.
General fund transfer.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so where would I find that information?
That would be back.
It's included on. Well, you can see it on slide 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just the difference from last year to this year, but it's still, I believe the number is 20,307,000.
You said slide 13?
Yes. We reduced it another 250,000 this year.
Okay, so that was my question. How much have we reduced it year over year? $250,000. Okay. My next question is looking at slide 19. I'm looking at the enterprise funds, and obviously there's a $79.5 million, or otherwise 21.8% increase in the enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm. The majority of that is the capital projects that were budgeted for this year, and the majority of that was in the electric operation, and a big chunk of that is in the water operation. But it's the upfront budgeting on the 5-year capital plan where we're budgeting for the life of the project. So we have some large capital appropriations built into that large increase. So I would say, I don't know, 90% of that is capital improvement projects that were budgeted this year, and that's primarily spending the bond money.
So it's bond money. That's what I was trying to understand. Where's that money going to materialize from? Okay. One more question. On slide 24, item 215, economic development. So it's obviously a new fund, right? It's an entirely new fund, $1.182 million. And this, I think, in the previous slide, either you or Mr. Ochoa indicated that basically the economic development team was moved from
management services.
From management services, which is part of the general fund.
So they are moving from the management services department into their own fund, and also the monies that come to us through the ROPS as we wind down the agency and have some residual. That would go towards programming and economic development activities.
And that's why I asked the question, because in the management services portion, I think we're looking at 300 some
Right, that was the
$1,000.
staffing portion. This includes the staff plus the programming for economic development.
Marketing, promotions.
So the extra $1.5 million, not 1.5, I'm sorry, $700 some $1,000 is from, you said, ROPS?
Our share as you see on the ROPS and the residual tax increment that flows back to Glendale as a taxing entity, that would be part of our share.
Okay. But this doesn't represent an increase.
No, it's quite a significant decrease.
We're just isolating it for accounting.
Okay, thank you.
From what we used to receive as a redevelopment agency, it's a pittance.
Okay. But how about year on year? last year to this year? Does this represent an increase or decrease, or is it the same amount?
Good question. From last year?
Well, when we set up the economic development function, we moved the staff from the remaining parts of the redevelopment agency, and we put them in management services. That 371,000 reduction is moving them from management services into this fund. The revenue, which equates to the additional 800,000 in programming, is peeled off from the additional property tax that we're getting via the ROPS that came about from the redevelopment dissolution. So that layer of property tax will be then used to fund the Fund 215.
Understanding
I understand that.
That share, that $800,000 of Bob, that's the residual that we get.
Right.
That used to be significantly more because now the school district's getting a piece of that, the community college district's getting that, the LA County, the County of Los Angeles is getting a piece of that, whereas before it used to entirely flow to GRA. Our share of that is $800,000.
My question is this: total amount of money that was spent on our economic development team, whether it's a fund or whatever, compared to that same amount of money that's being used on that team this year, has it increased? Has it decreased? Has it remained
It's a dramatic decrease.
Over last year?
Over last year, I'm sorry. I misunderstood thought you were talking about GRA.
Because everything else is easy to compare. Everything's like, okay, this year, last year, this year, last year. Now that we've created a new fund, it's hard to tell.
I believe it's a minimal increase year over year. As we retire the obligations of the redevelopment agency, theoretically, we're getting marginally more money as a taxing entity that used to be the redevelopment agency.
So it's like a single-digit increase?
It's a relatively small increase.
I think the issue is just isolated in this fund, so you see it all in one bucket as opposed to having it spread out throughout the general fund and then in management services, the revenue, and all the different pieces. So this way it's isolated so we know exactly what the function costs.
I understand. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'll introduce the ordinance then, 9A1.
Oh, are you introducing it?
Yeah. We'll get another shot at the Big Apple in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Did you open and close the hearing, Mr. Mayor?
You have to open. Should open the hearing. I don't know that we did that.
I don't know if you had any cards.
We have no card. We have no cards. We have Margaret Hammond. That's for 5 minutes.
Okay.
To Mr. Weaver's question, part of the ordinance that we have is establishing classifications that are contained in your staff report. They're really a reflection of the need to specialize and reflect what the duties are of the staff as we continue to reorganize. So if Mr. Weaver is looking to introduce, by all means.
He did. It's been introduced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for clarification, if I can ask on the fees, we're okay with bringing back the proposed fees outside of the Mills Act issue? We can set that aside?
No.
We'll discuss it in 2 weeks with additional information provided by different sources.
But there was consensus on the parking, the preferential parking, on the appeal.
You just didn't get that in.
And I think that the more general global theme of charging the full cost to larger scale types of developments, the council, there seemed to be consensus on that.
Yeah, because the developers will put it in their pro forma with the new fees, so.
And the consensus regarding the appeals was staff recommend $2,000.
Yes, sir. I understood that. So the outstanding issue is the Mills Act. Okay.
Okay. Next item.
Next item is
Never
oral
open.
communication.
Should we
Discussion
close?
is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is
I
allowed
heard
5
you say
minutes.
it.
Council may question or respond to a speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Good night, staff. What department heads?
Okay. Is this all? Okay. First and only speaker, Margaret Hammond.
Evening again, Honorable Mayor and Council, City staff, and audience. My name is Margaret Hammond. Again, bulky item pickup. I see a lot of stuff around, and there will be more probably by the end of the month when people move. 818-548-3916. Now, I know while this is an expense to the city and having trucks and men doing it, but it greatly adds to the value of the real estate in our city, because we have a city that is something to be proud of when it comes to having trash, or the lack of trash, laying around the city. And part of that is, of course, the encouragement and the job that your city commission, Glendale Clean and Beautiful, the committee, the effort that we put out and have for the last 15, 20 years regarding graffiti, which at one time was horrendous, the idea of grocery carts being laying around the city full of trash and garbage, and also being a health hazard because when they went back to the markets, they weren't always cleaned, and they caused accidents for cars and so forth. And it just got rid of a lot of eyesores. And the other deal being, of course, the smoking ordinance, which in a way has helped us considerably. It also improves the real estate value, particularly when they're obeyed. The rules are obeyed for people living in apartments and so forth that have had to put up with the smokers. And that was all things that our group worked on to get the rules enforced. Now, on Saturday, the Great American Cleanup, it was amazing. It was almost hard for us to find enough projects to clean up and take care of and to graffiti to paint over. Now, this is great. Just think about that, how much it saves the city and also how much it adds to the value and the quality of life for our citizens in the city. And there were about 500 people were there on Saturday. And the children, there were a big percentage of young people, young ones, as well as up into the teens, that worked on cleaning up, and picking up, and painting and so forth. And it helps to increase their awareness of how to be a good citizen. And like the poster contest, which is a big deal. We look at the advertising on the TV, what they sell with, advertising the kids listen to and so forth. So it's really amazing how much these kind of things can help to encourage our young people to be good citizens and volunteer and think in terms of giving back to their city and to their community. And the people that do it are not young people on the committee. Some of them are, like Marilyn Gunnell. I better not say how old she is, but we have a couple of people that are like 90 years old on that committee. And we're there and helping out on different jobs. We even had the dean of the college, Glendale College, and his family and his wife and family, and they were responsible for the breakfast that was given to the people before they left and for the lunches when they came back. We have people, one lady who's on the school board, I probably shouldn't be saying too much, but she was very helpful to us in getting groups from the schools to come, the band and choir, little ones during, singing, and which in the past has cost us money for musical entertainment. In this way, we save money. But I'm saying how many of them were there from the beginning, from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and handing out T-shirts and water and so forth, and getting the teams organized and so forth. So I'm saying it is a good committee, and I've worked on it for many years. In my opinion, one of the things that's worthwhile, anything to do with young people, with children, to encourage them to be part of the city and to be proud of their city. I really that's the one thing now that with my limited energy, more or less, I feel that I have to keep on coming out and supporting those kind of things. Also, the city staff. Many of the city staff were there. I don't know how. Oh, they went away. Okay, were there on Saturday. Some of them that were here, and that helped out and were responsible. And they cooperate, and we cooperate with them. And there's Hassan looking at me smiling, because it's true. He was there too, and as a cheerleader, probably. I don't know whether you did any actual work, but you encouraged us. Yeah, right. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond.
Again, we could be proud of our city.
We should be.
And we wouldn't keep America beautiful. How many awards have we got? Go look at them over there in the hallway. We have a lot of awards for the programs over the years that we've maintained for our city.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to the committee and everyone who participated in the Great American Cleanup. I have a question for Mr. Zern. Do we have a policy, or do we at least encourage our trash truck drivers, as they're doing their regular rounds, to pay attention whether there's bulky item pickup and report back? And
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Good.
We certainly do, and we continue to remind them of that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Zern. What's next? We have no more cards.
Mr. Mayor, there are no more items, and I don't believe there is any new business, as there was no closed session. I do want to make a really brief announcement, if I may, that I forgot to do during community event announcement portion. This Thursday, May 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Glendale Central Library, there will be a special presentation by Dr. Armina Kundakjian on a research project and a book, actually, she's published about the repression of the Armenian repatriates during the Stalin era. Many Armenians who repatriated to what was then the Soviet Union from all over the diaspora, including Armenians from the United States who were seeking to return to their ancestral homelands, fell victim to the Stalinistic purges, and she's done some amazing research that she'll present on Thursday, May 22nd, 7 p.m. Another wonderful, great library program brought to you by our Glendale Library Arts and Cultures.
Thank you, Mr. Kasakian.
We adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned.